Okay, so the story that Timothy asked me to share today is kind of like in the beginning of our journey. So Timothy and I, we got married at the young age of 19, and just like everyone, we waited a whole year before we started a family. And then when we embarked on beginning our family, we were so excited. I was the last of my siblings to actually start to have children. And so everyone around me was excited. And it took a little while, and then we got pregnant. And that was a joyous day, and everyone around me was so excited for us. We went to the doctor, and we got to see the baby and the heartbeat, and we were just ecstatic. Didn't think anything about it. And I went back to the doctor's 16-week checkup, just everything normal, and the baby had passed away. There wasn't a heartbeat. And sitting in the doctor's office, Timothy's at work. This was just a routine checkup. Didn't think anything about it. I was just hit so hard with this reality of I'm not in control. But I did leave there with a little hope because I had seen God healed my back twice. And when they offered to do a D&C, I said no. I said, let me go home. Let me go pray. So I went home, and my husband met me at home, and we began to pray. It was October 31st of 2000. And we began to beg and ask the Lord, the God that I knew that could heal, would heal our child. And as we prayed that night, we came to terms of, Lord, you either heal this child or you take this child home tonight. Because we were going against all advice of the doctors. The doctors wanted us to stay in the hospital and wanted me to deliver the baby there, and I said no. And so I knew that it was completely in God's hands. And that night we did deliver our baby, and the baby had passed away. And the next day, when I went to go drop off the baby to the hospital to show that everything was there, all the parts of the child, I left there just numb and very confused. And see, I was brought up in a home where I saw the Spirit of God move in mighty ways. I'd seen the power of God in mighty ways, and I was really left with this undoubtedly just shattered. I'd never seen him not answer prayers. And so my doctor, the OB, was like, you're good to go. It doesn't look like anything is wrong. You guys can go ahead and start to try and have another child. And I was still paused at this moment. And Timothy, as months went on, he's like, hey, I'm going to go and serve in the youth ministry at the church that we were attending. And I just said, that's great. I don't want to serve in the youth ministry at the church. I was working for Youth for Christ at the time. So Timothy is serving over there, and I'm over here. And then he comes back. He goes, hey, they want to know if you would be willing to go to winter camp with the group of kids. And if you know anything about me, I don't like the snow, let alone going to the snow with kids. And so I was like, do I really have to? He's like, it'd be really good. They need more adult leaders. And I was like, sure. I go ahead and I go to the camp, and I'm kind of begrudgingly, and I'm not really involved. I'm not wanting to really connect with any of these leaders because I'm still walking with a lot of pain and honestly a lot of hurt between me and God. And I was in silence. I was suffering in silence. And on a walk one day, I was up at Woodleaf, and I was in a meadow. I began to jot down 3 questions. I didn't share them with anyone. I didn't even want to speak them out loud. I didn't go to Timothy, but it was just between me and God. And later that night, I went back to the cabin, and they were having a service, and I told Timothy, I don't feel good. I don't want to go to the service. So I stayed back into the cabin, and as I'm just kind of there, and I'm wrestling, and yet I'm silent about it, this adult leader, Celie Hemsworth, she runs into the cabin, and she's like, Tara, I have a youth that's in my brigade, and she really needs to talk to you. And I'm just like right now? And she's like, yes. She is demanding to talk to you. And I was like, okay, you can go get her. And so they go and grab this little girl, and Jerusha walks in, young little girl. She's 14 years old. She looks at me, big brown eyes, and she goes, Tara, I have the answers to your 3 questions. And I look at her, and I'm like, what? And she's like, you asked the Lord if your child was a boy or a girl, and it was a little girl. You asked the Lord if he sees you, he hears your cry and your prayers, and he sees you, Tara, and he's holding you. And then lastly, you ask the Lord to make you sick if you were to have more children, so that you would know that your baby would be fine. And he says, you will definitely have more children, and yes, you will be sick as a sign that your child will be healthy. And I dropped to the floor. And I remember just the only thing I could scream out was, go get Timothy. Go find my husband. So I raced to go get him, and I began to share with him. I had these 3 questions, and I have been hurting, and I have been waiting and wrestling with the Lord. And now we know we had a daughter, and we can say goodbye, and we can name her. And then we sat and we hugged each other, and we comforted each other, and knowing that the Lord said we will have more children. Well, as many people might have thought, it would have just been an easy journey. But that journey went from weeks to months to years where I was not having children. And then it led me to infertility, to the specialist that told me I would never have children. And in that moment, all I could hang on to was that one seed of hope that the Lord spoke, that against all odds, he kept reminding me, go back here, Tara. I had 9 incidents where people came up to me and told me I was in fact pregnant, and I wasn't. And I would go back to the Lord. I'm like, why does this keep happening? Why is this taking so long? And I felt his comfort and his strength. And then it's so like our God that in the moment of such despair, my husband came to me and just said, Tara, we're not going to go to the doctors anymore. And I spoke to the pastor, and no one's going to come and try to give us words of prophecy of this, that we're going to hope in God. And we're just going to go straight ahead and put everything in Jesus. And I was like, okay, let's go. And 10 months later, from that moment, he spoke that. The Lord shared with Timothy in a prayer time that, go buy your wife a pregnancy test. And he came to me the next morning, and it was a service at church, and we were giving thanks to God. And mind you, at this church, since I had been there for about 6 years, everyone had known that Tara and Timothy were the couple that was barren, that were waiting for a child. Many, many knew. And that morning when my husband came to me ever so gently, because he knew the vulnerability and the risk that he was taking in bringing his wife a pregnancy test, was pretty scary for him. And so he came to me very gently. He's like, Tara, will you take this test? And I just looked at him. I'm like, no, don't do this today. Not today. He's like, please. And there was just a way that he was asking me that just softened me. And I said, okay, I'll take it. So I took it, and I actually threw it on the counter. And I went to get in the shower. And then I hear my husband's voice go, Tara, we're pregnant. And what was so like God was it wasn't just about Timothy and I and the journey that he was going to embark me on, that I knew. I didn't know then, but that when he spoke to me 5 years previous, that I needed that type of revelation. I needed that word, that prophetic word, in such a powerful way, because he knew the journey that I was about to set on. That was going to have so many roadblocks and barriers, all the way up to the professionals telling me I will never have children. I needed it that kind of way. But then that he would use my husband in such a gentle way to deliver the news, but so much more on that Sunday when Timothy got to deliver the news to our pastor and the whole church. We were ending the service and everyone's giving thanks. The pastor stood up and said, we have one more thing to give thanks for today. Tara and Timothy are expecting their child. And the whole church erupted. And it's so like God, because every time the Lord brings you on a journey or through a trial where he speaks, it has very little to do about you and way more about his name being glorified. And his whole glory was on display through this little trial, through this journey. And I was just undone that he had chosen us to walk us on and in this journey and brought us through it. And we were able to name our daughter Moriah Hannah Stewart, which meant the Lord has provided graciously.